Greetings and salutations. I am Kobold Expeditions, and today we're looking at dungeon basics. In my philosophy, encounters and dungeons should be synonymous. The reason for this is they should all be built from the ground up, all details planned out. If you have wandering people by in the alleyway or in the dungeon, doesn't matter. They should be hostages for the bad guys, reinforcements for you, reinforcements for the bad guys, witnesses you need to find so that you can clear your name later. No one should arrive in your combat zone by accident. Now, that aside, you also need to consider environment. Has it been raining? If it's been raining, perhaps your caves are flooded, or perhaps your sewer crawl has just turned into a sewer swim. Always gross. Fog. Is there an ambush waiting, or is it just something to really make your players nervous? These are things you should consider. The environment, the weather, all of these things change how a dungeon can run. A simple trap where a hallway has an enchantment of ice. Those who live in the dungeon, the monsters and so on, know that it's there. They may have crampons if they're intelligent, or maybe you just have ice creatures in this hallway that can adapt to it naturally. In any case, lower-powered monsters, the inability for your players to keep their footing while fighting, and suddenly, what wasn't a threat at all before becomes a very difficult combat. These little tricks are something to help keep in mind. Next. How many kinds of dungeons are there, really? Well, everybody has their own different philosophical ideal on it. Mine is that there are 4. The first is the story-based one, where you introduce hooks, grant information further along the current plot, or just develop character. A little more background on Fred the Ranger, or Eric the pilot for the starship. Whatever it is you're playing, that's where a story comes in. Next, puzzle dungeons. Rarely used, mostly because people don't know how to use them. I've encountered very few dungeon masters who actually are familiar with the concept and actually know how to utilize them proper. I can tell you right now, bombs and traps can be very tension-inducing. You don't need monsters or bounty hunters or evil villains with weapons to make a dungeon difficult and challenging. Puzzle dungeons can be as simple as you have to figure out what the passphrase is, especially now that you've entered the dungeon. Turns out all those skeletons were piled there because you can't get back past the enchanted field of force unless you have the right passphrase. Or maybe you're on a starship and you need to get to the escape pods before the place self-destructs. A force field then isn't just a chance for the electronics expert to shine. It's a chance for everyone to sweat. Now, the third type of dungeon is the adventure dungeon. The adventure dungeon is a hybrid of all of the others. Monsters, traps, treasure, the typical, oh my god, did you see what was lurking down that corridor? That sort of thing. It should have elements of story, it should have elements of tension, and it should also have just cool things to experience and look at. Remember, if it's just a bunch of hallways with traps and monsters, you might as well just go play a form of Gauntlet online. That is not why your players are at your table. They're there to see something they weren't expecting. Make sure you have at least 2 or 3 curveballs for them. Also, nice scenery, if mentally disturbing, doesn't hurt. Remember, if this is a creature's lair, they also may have ideals about what makes a good decoration. Anyway, fourth and last is the meat grinder. The meat grinder has a very special purpose and a very special place in my heart. And that is, it induces tension, makes your players sweat, and it grinds their resources away. The meat grinder is a specialized environment where you can put all the enemies and monsters you want in, but the players can't get out. The importance of this should be quite clear. If you have players who hoard the alien artifacts, or the grenades, or the wands and magic potions and scrolls, they've built up quite the arsenal they're just traveling around with, and you want your big bad evil guy to be a difficult challenge. You put them through a meat grinder first. This allows you to diminish their resources, and it allows you to, well, put fear of character death right into your players. You have, if it's done correctly, an unending supply of monsters. They have no help coming. And the only reason they'll get out is honestly because you, as the dungeon master, allow it. That's why the meat grinder is also the trickiest of the 4. If you aren't careful, if you don't know what you're doing, you will kill them. And, well, they'll just figure, and rightly so, that you were just being malicious. Malicious, yes, but you should always have a purpose or intent with a meat grinder. Anyway, we'll be making videos on each one of these in specific later. Hope you enjoyed yourself, and we'll see you next time.